just thrilled. The library is thrilled to have you, Richard. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak to Coronado. Thank you.
Yes, well, it's great to be back, and I remember that splendiferous day, evening of February 21st at the library. We just filled the whole foyer, and that is foyer, my friends, not foyer. That's what we call French fried English, like niche. It should be niche and all of that. And that was the kickoff on Coronado Reads, very readable community. And I just had a great time, and it's wonderful to be back here in my storeroom of toilet paper. You'll see it's the new currency. And I figure that this should last me for maybe a month, the stuff you see in the background. So wonderful, wonderful to be here and Zooming in this webinar with a program of language and laughter for these uncertain and at times treacherous days. So going to be a lot of laughs, folks, and I won't be able to hear you, but I know you're going to be there laughing, and I hope you'll think about sharing this with friends. So to start, I think you can all see this, a little bit glary, but this is a book of mine called Fractured English, and you'll notice a somewhat jiggered photograph of me. So long ago, I was in New York, where you start your tour if you're from back east, and I'm a Philadelphia boy. I was on the tour very early. I had barely gotten the book myself, and a woman walked my way, and she had this book in her hand. And I had barely gotten the book myself, and so I was hoping she'd notice me, and but she didn't. She started to walk right by, even though I went, yeah. And of course, I've gotten a lot younger looking since that picture. And it didn't work. She started to walk by, and I said, ma'am. And she said, yes. I said, do you see that book you're holding in your hand? I wrote that book. She looked at the book, looked at me, and said, so what? And kept on walking. But the so what is, I live in Scripps Ranch, incidentally. The so what is to be back with you thanks to the magic of Zoom. Get ready for a lot of humor, a lot of puns. I'll hold this up so you can see. A pun at maturity is fully grown. You'll note the second line is what we call a homophone, grown, and grown with a W instead of an A. And it means same sound but different spelling. Just wonderful to be here with you. So I'm going to start, so I'll put the spectacles on. I lift my glasses to you with an essay I've written about humor, which we need at these times. I ran a puns contest recently in the Union Tribune. You may know me from that. Every week it's been until recently, Lederer on Language on B2, the local section 2 on Saturday. And it's now every other week because of the restrictions of Administrative Bill 5. So I now go every other week. I ran a puns contest, and there was just a torrent of praise on words. All for pun, pun for all. A good pun is its own reward, etc. So here's a little essay I wrote. If you want this essay or anything else that I do on this show, I'm going to hold this up, and I'll hold it up later. But this is my email address up top if you need me to send you anything from this or anything else. And that is my website at the bottom if you're interested in books or anything else, and all my previous columns are up there. So I'm a teacher, I'm a compulsive sharer, and you're welcome to that stuff. The deluge of submissions to my recent puns contest is rollicking testimony to our need for humor. The profound act of laughter is a special blessing to us who are living in the long, dark shadow of contagion. The late and beloved humorist Richard Armour contends, comedy, and I'm quoting, is as high an art as tragedy. It is as important to make people laugh as it is to make people cry, unquote. An Apache myth tells us that the Creator made human beings able to walk and talk, to see and hear, to do everything. But the Creator wasn't satisfied. He gifted humans with laughter. And when we laughed and laughed, the Creator said, now you are fit to live. In Navajo culture, there is something called the first laugh ceremony. Tradition dictates that each Navajo baby is kept on a cradle board until he or she laughs for the first time. Then the tribe throws a celebration in honor of the child's first laugh, which is considered to be his or her birth as a social being. We are not only Homo sapiens, the creature who thinks, we are Homo guffawus, the creature who laughs. Humor is not a trick, writes former Prairie Home Companion host Garrison Keeler. Humor is a presence in the world, like race, and shines on everybody, unquote. As bread is the staff of life, laughter is its nectar. Quote, a good laugh and a long sleep are the two best cures, winks an Irish adage. Quote, what soap is to the body, laughter is to the soul, observes a Yiddish proverb. 5-year-olds laugh naturally about 250 times a day. How sad it is that as we age, we almost inevitably gain girth and lose mirth. Many of us don't laugh 250 times a month. You don't stop laughing because you grow old. You grow old because you stop laughing. Man is the only animal who blushes or needs to, declared Mark Twain. He could have added, man is the only animal that truly laughs or needs to, unquote. Recent studies show that he or she who laughs lasts, bit of a pun there, who laughs lasts. Norman Cousins, who used laughter to conquer a debilitating disease, wrote, and I'm quoting, illness is not a laughing matter. Perhaps it ought to be. It has always seemed to me that hearty laughter is a good way to jog internally without having to go outdoors, unquote. Scientists affirm what we have known to be true since biblical times. A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, unquote. Laughter can be hazardous to your illness. Sorry, lost my place here. Laughter stimulates the circulation, tones the muscles, energizes the lungs and respiratory system, excites endorphins in the immune system, boosts the neurotransmitters needed for alertness and memory, increases motivation to learn, and provides superb aerobic exercise. In Make 'em Laugh, Stanford University professor William Fry explains, when laughter gets to the point that it is convulsive, almost every muscle in the body is involved, unquote. According to a Vanderbilt University study, robust laughter burns up to 40 calories in 15 minutes and increases metabolism by about 10%. You can giggle away 4 pounds a year. Turns out that laughter is in truth the best medicine. Laughter is also an elixir for the mind. Tests administered before and after humor therapy reveal a reduction of stress and depression and a heightened sense of well-being and creativity. More and more, science is discovering that it hurts only when we don't laugh. Laughter is to life what shock absorbers are to automobiles. It won't take the potholes out of the road, but it sure makes the ride smoother, unquote. Avows Barbara Johnson, or to press into service another simile, laughter is like changing a baby's diaper. It doesn't permanently solve problems, but it makes things more tolerable for a while. Reminds me of that politicians joke about politicians. What do politicians and diapers have in common? They both need frequent changing, and for the same reason. Notice not one dirty four-letter word on this library station. Laughter is the shortest distance between two people, laughs pianistic comedian Victor Borge. He was a very funny guy and a great pianist, and that's the way we pronounce it in America. Pianist is British. The most watched of all days is One Without Laughter, advises poetry wizard E. Cummings. Go forth and practice random acts of laughter. One of those acts should be to laugh at yourself. If you can do that, you'll never cease to be amused. Hi, I'm Richard Lederer. You may know me from the Union Tribune. That's what they call a newspaper. And you kind of have these big sheets within which is another big sheet within another. And you can use it to line the bottom of a bird cage, although you can watch it online. And then is it really a newspaper? Some of you may remember me from Away with Words, which Charles Harrington Elster, and I started in 1998. I think it was June, and we're very ably succeeded by Martha Barnett and Grant Barrett. And that show is in many, many places across the country, but it originates here in San Diego. So to continue, I will share with you the best language jokes ever that I know. And these are from literally thousands, and I want to give you the very best. Now, the source of that tingly sensation that you feel when you strike your arm is the knob at the end of the bone running from your shoulder to the elbow. The medical name for that is technically the humerus, Humerus. But around 1840, back way then, a clever wag seized on the inevitable pun and dubbed it the funny bone. And that's become part of our language. And in fact, since then, we found that if you boil your funny bone, it becomes a humorous laughing stock. And I kept Humerus. So to thrive on life, to thrive in life, you need three bones: a wishbone, a backbone, and a funny bone. Well, today, this program is designed to tickle your humerus, Humerus. Why do we play at a recital and recite at a play? Drive in a parkway, park in a driveway. Why does a man get a hernia and a woman a hysterectomy? Why is it that your nose can run and your feet can smell? Well, because language is naturally playful, we human beings love to make jokes about words. So here are my favorite linguistic tours de farce. You know, it's not who you know, it's whom you know. And by the way, if you want this or any other part, Richard, just email me, richardhlederer@gmail.com. Oh, Lederer is Lederer, pretty phonetic. Do you know that the word gullible is not in the dictionary? Ah, did I get you? Because it is, but you get the joke there. You were not gullible, I'm sure. I bought the world's worst Thesaurus today. Well, how bad is it, you ask? Not only is it awful, it's awful. I like switching around letters. Boss is spelled that way because your boss is a backward double SOB. And another that I like is I don't play golf because the letters GOLF spelled backwards are flog, and I don't want to go out and flog myself in an effort to be subpar. On the show, sorry for touching my face and ears, but on the show, in this performance, I want to be above par. But that's the story with golf, FLOG, backwards. The only place where success comes before work is in the dictionary. True, of course, alphabetically. I hate it when people use big words just to make themselves sound perspicacious. I used to correct my friend's grammar, but I stopped. And that's because I decided it was better to have friends than to always be right. Um, sorry. Yeah. Now here's the etymology of the word politics. What you do in etymology is it's hard by the yard, but it's cinch by the inch. So what you want to do is break things up. So how nice of the Coronado Library, beautiful place, kind of Art Deco and very welcoming place, very outreaching place. Um, how magnanimous to have me doing this pioneering webinar. Well, magnanimous, magna is large, as in magnitude, and anima is spirit, as in to be animated, excuse me, or to watch an animated film, meaning it's filled with spirit, it moves, a cartoon, but moving. You know that poly means many. Sorry, uh, my point is, and you're a very perspicacious group, Perry is through and spec is to look into to see. And so perspicacious, you put them together. So that's the point about the word politics. Poly is many, and ticks are blood-sucking parasites. What's the difference between a cat and a comma? Well, a cat has claws at the end of its paws, and a comma is a pause at the end of a clause. So a little bit of a reversal called chiasmus. My three favorite things are eating my family and not using commas, because that should be my three favorite things are eating, comma, my family, comma, and not using commas. But it comes out, are eating my family and not using commas. This is what happens when you fail to use the serial comma. There's a famous book dedication, a real one, that read, to my parents, comma, the Pope and Mother Teresa. Well, we were always wondering about those two, but without that comma after Pope, it appears as though the Pope and Mother Teresa are the parents of the author. But that's not what was meant, and it would have all been solved if the author had simply written to my parents, comma, the Pope, comma, and Mother Teresa. Speaking about slightly religious things, do you know that technically Moses was the first man to download data from the cloud to his tablet? 20 years ago, we had Johnny Cash, Steve Jobs, and Bob Hope. Now we have no Cash, no Jobs, and no Hope. Please don't let Meatloaf, that's the singer, 2 words, Meatloaf, John Hamm, and Kevin Bacon die. So going back over that, Meatloaf is a singer, John Hamm, the star of Mad Men and of a number of other very fine films, and Kevin Bacon, I assume you all know. So we've lost Cash, Jobs, and Hope, but gosh, we don't want to lose Meatloaf, Ham, and Bacon, for whatever that's worth. I taught in a church boarding school, Episcopal, up in Concord, New Hampshire. And whenever one of my classroom students would ask me, Mr. Lederer, can I go to the bathroom? I replied, I sure hope so. The difference between can and may I go. Can I go is, am I able to do it? Have you heard about the dyslexic agnostic insomniac? He stayed up all night, tossing and turning, wondering if there was a dog. Yeah, this is one of my favorites. A minister, a priest, and a rabbit. I'll start again. A minister, a priest, and a rabbit walk into a blood bank to donate blood. A nurse asks each of them to provide their blood type. Says the rabbit, I'm pretty sure I'm a type O. As in typo, remember, it was a priest, a minister, and a rabbit. People wonder what other languages I'm fluent in besides English. And I'll tell you, I'm fluent in French, Russian, Italian, Thousand Island vinaigrette, ranch, gorgonzola, green goddess, honey mustard. I'm working on balsamic even as we speak. And I do happen to speak Esperanto like a native. Remember, there's no I in denial. No I, the letter, in denial. My girlfriend texted me and she asked, I'll try it again. My girlfriend texted me and here's what she wrote. She wrote this, "You're adorable." Oh, look at that. I texted her back and I said, "No, you're adorable," all caps with an apostrophe. Now she's crazy about me, and I haven't the courage to tell her I was correcting her spelling and punctuation. Remember, my friends, don't pet the sweaty things and don't sweat the petty things. And speaking about letters and so on, another visual, those who are out to impugn the reputation of the former governor of Alaska and the former vice presidential candidate with John McCain in 2008 are out to harass Sarah. Now look at that. You see that sign? Look at the letters. What's unusual about them? You may know that they work forward and backward, and that is HARASS, SARAH, goes both ways, and that's called a palindrome. But in this case, it's not really a palindrome, it's a palindrome, capital PALIM space DROME. And that works, that's called uncharating a word. All of these things have names. St. Peter hears a knocking at the gates of heaven. And he calls out, "Who's there?" And a voice says, "It is I." And God, and good, says St. Peter, "You must be another English teacher. Come right in. It is I." That's nominative there in the predicate after the what we call the existential verb. Now, some contend that there is no difference between the adjectives complete and finished. Complete and finished. They look like 100% overlap, like big and large. But in fact, there clearly is. When you marry the right woman, you are complete. When you marry the wrong woman, when a man marries the wrong woman, he is finished. But when the right woman catches the man with the wrong woman, he is completely finished. Give you a chance to laugh uproariously. My wife, and this is sort of persona for the joke, we were expecting our first child, and she started to feel, you know what, we rushed to the hospital. She was put in a bed and she started yelling, "Won't, can't, wouldn't, couldn't, didn't," etc. And I said to the doctor, "Doctor," I cried. I said, "What's going on?" And the doctor says, "It's perfectly normal. She's having contractions." Again, any of this available to you. Taking an informative break from all the hilarity, I move on to something I call viral words. And these are going to be, this is going to be information, and again, available to you from me at richardhlederer@gmail.com. And by the way, that email is at the bottom of my column every other week. Viral words. On February 11th this year in Geneva, the head of the WHO, World Health Organization, unveiled the name of a new disease, COVID-19. A little more than a month later, COVID-19 landed in Merriam-Webster's online dictionary, the fastest journey from conception to formal recognition in the company's nearly 200-year history. as the coronavirus wraps its tentacles around our planet, but they're starting to loosen. And even as I give this webinar, one of the medicines for SARS is looking promising to speed a cure for those who have contracted the virus. As this is going on, you might be wondering why the respiratory pathogen is dubbed COVID-19. Well, in this instance, this is what we call a clipped compound. And what you're doing is you take words, you string them together, and you cut off the back or you cut off the tail. And the best example I can think of is, sorry, I'll have to, Nabisco, National Biscuit Company. So the back of National, Biscuit and Company have been severed. AMVETS is another possibility, American Veterans, etc. You get a number of those, Sunoco gasoline or Amoco or Arco or whatever. So this gives us CO for corona, VI for virus, and D for disease. That gives us COVID. And 19 is the year of the outbreak in China. 19 does not stand for the pounds that you will be gaining by staying at home. Corona, the word, derives from a Greek through Latin word for garland, wreath, or crown. And that's because one of the characteristics under an electron microscope of the virus is that there's a fringe of large bulbous surface projections that create an image resembling a crown, as in Coronado and our local Coronado, and of course in Coronation. Virus, the word, began life as a Latin word with the same spelling that meant poison, specifically the venom from a snake or spider. Virus also signified filthy, slimy, referring to the foul and filthy and slimy places that cause people to become sick from contact with contaminated water and refuse. Disease descends from Latin through Old French and originally meant without ease, just that you were ill at ease. And the sense of sickness, that disease, not recorded until very late 14th century. Now, another word we're seeing and hearing a lot these days is quarantine. The first meaning of quarantine, you can see the quarenta in there, from the Italian quarantina, was a period of 40 days during which a widow had the right to continue living in her deceased husband's house that was to be seized for death, but she had 14 days. And speaking of that, a famous contemporary film director is making a documentary of the lockdown stay at home in New Jersey. And he is going to, and his name is Trenton Quarantino. Think about it. Again, if you need it, I'm happy to send it to you. Well, soon, quarantine took on the related meaning of 40 days in which a ship suspected of harboring disease had to remain in isolation. The arbitrary number was based on the notion that after 40 days, the disease on board would either have run its course and ended any chance of contagion, or would have burst forth its ghastly fury. Finally, quarantine broadened to signify any period of sequestering, and the reference to 40 has vanished. And you might say, well, quarantine at 40, that's embedded in it. You have to keep the meaning. It's not the way language works. September, October, November, December, that looks like 7, 8, 9, 10. And it was originally, but with the Julian counter and the addition of months earlier, they became, of course, the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. And you can't insist on that. It would be like saying, well, manufacture is from manus factus, the Latin meaning made by hand, so it has to be made by hand. No, not anymore. And so many more that do that. Well, then there's the word vaccinate. For centuries, smallpox was a scourge of humanity, scarring and killing millions. Edward Jenner, a British doctor, this is late in the 18th century, noticed that milkmaids did not generally get smallpox and theorized that the pus and the blisters that these women developed from cowpox protected them from the more virulent smallpox. In 1796, Jenner found that inoculating people with a serum containing the lymph gland fluid of cows infected with cowpox virus prevented the similar smallpox, and that's why vaccine, vaccination, and vaccinate contain the Latin name for cow, vacca, V-A-C-C-A. Words do wonder wondrously. COVID has been declared a global pandemic. Now, the word epidemic originated with the Greek epidemia, constructed from epi, among, and demos, people, as in democracy and democratic. The pan in pandemic means all, as in Pan-American, panorama, and panacea. Following the analogy of pantheon, meaning a place for all the gods, the poet John Milton welded together pan, all, and demon, devils, to forge pandemonium, which literally means a place of all demons. Because Satan and his company were noisy and mischief-making, the meaning of pandemonium has broadened to mean uproar and tumult. Now, throughout March 2020, the top 50 most searched for definitions in the Merriam-Webster website were COVID-19 related, top 50. Two, the pandemic has generated a growing lexicon of new words and compounds, including social distancing. I don't think that's a good compound. I prefer physical distancing. I suspect many of you have thought about that. COVIDiot, I love this one. This is a blend or portmanteau word, quote, a person who behaves recklessly during the pandemic, and Zoom bombing, an intrusion into a video conference. Once again, I'll remind you that any of this and anything else, gee, if you're interested in, can you end a sentence? Can you use a preposition to end the sentence with? Or, gee, can you give me a brief history of the English language? And why is it called English? It's from the Angles, Anglish. Or did Shakespeare, the Stratford man, really write? That's all you have to do is go to that email up top. I am hoping to be back in person, by the way, in the fall to the Coronado Library. And that could well, to talk about presidents, and that could well be in October. And I'm pleased to tell you that I am be publishing hilarious, nope, wrong, publishing a treasury of Halloween humor for Halloween, and a treasury of Christmas humor for Christmas, and hope to have them with me when I see you. Okay, love the time with you. I'm a teacher and I'm a compulsive sharer, and language just is my thing. When I was just a youngster, I noticed that a butterfly would flutter by. It's a spoonerism, not that I knew that then. As I got older, I got a little more sophisticated. A dragonfly will drink its flagon dry. And so it's been lucky to have that. Okay, now for one of my 2 or 3 most famous essays, The World According to Student Bloopers. It's really astounding what havoc students can wreak upon the English language and upon history. and the Chronicles of the Human Race. And I've pasted together the following history: fluffs and flubs, goofs and gaffs, blunders, botches, boo-boos, and bloopers, all from genuine certified or authentic student bloopers collected from teachers throughout the world, from 8th grade through college. Listen carefully. Of course, I'm happy to send it to you, and you will learn a lot. The inhabitants of ancient Egypt lived in the Sahara Desert, which they cultivated by irrigation and traveled over by Camelot. They all rode in hydraulics, and ancient Egyptian women wore a colossurus, a loose-fitting garment, which began just below the breast, which hung to the floor. From the Egyptians, inevitably, to the Bible, one of my favorite Bible riddles, why were Adam and Eve the happiest couple on earth? And you might say it's because they didn't have any in-laws to contend with and boss them around. Well, that's possible, but my answer is Adam and Eve were the happiest couple on earth because she couldn't tell him how many other men she could have married, and he couldn't tell her how much he loved his mother's cooking. I'm not sure if I did this. I don't think I did, but here's my shirt. I'll hold it up here. It makes kind of a mask. A pun at maturity is fully grown, homophonic, G-R-O-A-N, and instead of a W, two things that sound alike. And if I did say it before, so what? I repeat myself. So what? I repeat myself. Oh, sorry, just did that. Well, so we go to the Bible. Noah's wife was called Joan of Arc. Lot's wife was a pillar of salt by day and a ball of fire by night. Moses went up on Mount Sinai to get the 10 Commandments, but he died before he ever reached Canada. David was a Hebrew king skilled at playing the lyre. Solomon, one of David's sons, had 300 wives and 700 porcupines. I should add to that, to whom he made love very carefully. Inevitably now to classical mythology. The Greeks were a highly sculptured people, and without them we wouldn't have history. The Greeks invented 3 kinds of columns: Corinthian, Ironic, and Doric. They also created myths. A myth is a female moth, and one myth tells us that the mother of Achilles dipped him in the river Styx until he became intolerable. Again, every one of these, I don't make them up, I stitch them together, but from teachers all over the world. Socrates was a famous Greek teacher who went around giving people advice. They killed him. Socrates died of an overdose of wedlock. And if you know his wife, Xantippe, I think you would understand. And he drank the hemlock in the service of truth and died from that. So that's the way that one works. The more you know about mythology, the more you will understand such allusions. What's the difference between a centaur, that's C-E-N-T-A-U-R, and a senator, S-E-N-A-T-O-R? Well, one is half man and half horse's ass, and the other is a creature in mythology. Moving along from the Greeks to the Latin, eventually the Romans came along and conquered the Greeks. And there's a focus in my Anguished English book on Julius Caesar, who extinguished himself on the battlefields of Gaul. And when the Ides of March murdered him, he expired with these immortal words upon his dying lips: "Eat you, Brutus." And that's instead of "Et tu, Brute," from Shakespeare's tragedy of Julius Caesar. Well, the wheel of history revolves again, and the Romans are overrun by the barbarians. And this takes us into the Middle Ages, when everyone was middle-aged. King Arthur lived in the age of chivalry, with brave knights on prancing horses and beautiful women. Joan of Arc Magna Carta ensured that no free man should be hanged twice for the same offense. Joan of Arc was burnt to a stake. I would call that a rare medium well done. People contracted the blue-bonnet plague, which caused them to grow boobs on their necks. And they also perform morality plays about ghosts, goblins, virgins, and other mythical creatures. Then came the Renaissance, in which people really felt the value of their human being, a wonderful, albeit inadvertent, definition of humanism. So in the Renaissance, full of a great many inventions and discoveries, Gutenberg invented the Bible and removable type. So Walter Raleigh discovered cigarettes and started smoking. And Sir Francis Drake circumcised the world with a 100-foot clipper. So the double meaning of circumcised for circumnavigated, and clipper for the ship and the other process. Now, I don't neglect American history in anguished English. During the Renaissance, but I'm going to be selective here, America began its history. Christopher Columbus discovered America while cursing about the Atlantic on the Nina, the Pinta Colada, and the Santa Fe. I'm not making that up. Then we moved to Abraham Lincoln. He became America's greatest president. Lincoln's mother died in infancy, and he was born in a log cabin which he built with his very own hands. Abraham Lincoln wrote the Gettysburg Address while traveling from Washington to Gettysburg on the back of an envelope. Once again, Abraham Lincoln wrote the Gettysburg Address while traveling from Washington to Gettysburg on the back of an envelope. Envelope, again, is preferred. Envelope is a little bit French fried English. But you see that on the back of an envelope is misplaced. It should be right next to wrote. He wrote, Abraham Lincoln wrote on the back of an envelope, the Gettysburg Address rather, on the back of an envelope while traveling from Washington to Gettysburg, period. You want to move your, or locate, excuse me, your modifiers, whether they be single words or phrases or even clauses. You want to move those right smack dab up to that which they purport to modify. Or you can get in some deep trouble, and I'll share 3 bloopers I've collected that are just marvelously misplaced modifiers. TV Guide, late 80s, Yoko Ono talks about her husband, John Lennon, who was killed in an interview with Barbara Walters. An interview with Barbara Walters on ABC. Boston Globe, former hostage Terry Anderson, this is early 90s, talks about his 5 years of captivity with Barbara Walters on Channel 5 at 10 p.m. And finally, AP, the Associated Press, all over your land and my land, our beautiful country. And this has to do with a gentleman, an Olympic diver who has some San Diego roots. The diving and amateur sports communities remained in shock today following revelations from Olympic diver Greg Louganis, who contracted AIDS in a 2020 interview with Barbara Walters, of course, and there it is. I really appreciate this opportunity to reach out beyond the frail confines of my corporeal body. And that's what human beings are about. We're sort of made to do that. And thank you, Zoom, and the other services like that. So I'm going to close with an essay on turning 82. That happens May 26th, 2020. I am so old that when I was a boy, the Grand Canyon was a gopher hole. Rainbows were in black and white. Moby Dick was a minnow, and the Dead Sea was only sick. So I'm going to be turning 82 in less than a month from recording this, and I'm going to close with a reading of this essay. I'm button-burstingly proud to announce that my life's odometer will soon flip over to the number 82. Some people try to turn back their odometer. Others of us want people to know why we look this way. We admit that we have bumps and dents and scratches in our finish, and the paint job is getting a little dull, and sure, the fenders are too wide to be in style, and our seats are sagging. The battery no longer holds a charge, and the headlights have dimmed. So by this point, we have moved from metaphor or a kind of a simile to analogy. Analogy is an extended metaphor, and after about 3 sentences, that's what you get. The hoses are brittle and much of the original tire tread is worn away. The transmission stays in low gear and doesn't easily shift to high. We don't convert our fuel as efficiently as we used to, and climbing any hill is liable to cause sputtering. And as efficiently, and whenever we sneeze or cough, our radiator seems to leak and our exhaust system backfires. By the way, I should have demonstrated that, not the other way. But you know what? We've traveled many, many miles, and some of the roads weren't paved. Wisdom and laughter are our shock absorbers. We are now classics. I'm no longer a spring chicken, I'm a winter chicken. I'm no longer wet behind the ears, I'm dry behind the ears. I'm no longer knee-high to a grasshopper, I'm sky-high above a grasshopper. I'm not a has-been, I'm an about to be. I'm a perennial, I'm still blooming. By the way, I like perennial as a name for my age group, in my case, pre-war and baby boomers, it would work. And we continue to bloom and blossom. While growing older is mandatory, attitude is ageless. More than 2 millennia ago, the Greek playwright Sophocles wrote, air quotes, only one must wait until the evening to see how splendid the day has been, unquote. Now it's my prose. Only at sunset is the day truly golden. The later the hour of the day, the longer the shadow you cast. The poet Robert Browning wrote, grow old along with me, the best is yet to be, the last of life for which the first was made. I may be over the hill, but that's better than being under the hill. And it's not till you're going downhill that you really pick up speed. Birthdays are good for you. Studies show that the more you have, the more of them you have, the longer you live. You'll never be younger again than you are right now, and there's only one way to live a long life, and that is to age. And there's only one way to age, with a smile. After all, you're only old once. You know, studies show that body temperature declines from decade to decade, and that the drop becomes particularly pronounced among chronologically endowed people like me. I happen to be, as a result, among the coolest people on earth. I am under 98, somewhere in the 97s, and that's not age, but temperature. Now that I am full of years and white of hair, and the evening star glows in the sky, now that, as the bard wrote, my yellow leaf falls from bare ruin choirs where late the sweet bird sang, I know that as life accumulates, the beauty steals inward. In the winter of my content, I find myself filled with one overmastering emotion, gratitude For my Dutch-American wife, Simone Van Egeren, and the saucy Hollandaise, I have so lived with her, including, by the way, her setting up the Zoom at this end. I married her a little bit for tech support, but for a lot of other things. For a family which now embraces 3 children and 7 grandchildren. For enduring friendships, the best of all ships. As the Irish proverb says, there are good ships and there are wood ships, the ships that sail the sea. But the best ships are friendships, may they always be. For the abundant venison of San Diego, to which Simone and I moved 25 years ago, and which felt like home the minute we set foot here and still does. For the accidents of genetic and environmental roulette that made me a word-struck, word-bethoughted, word-bethumped wordaholic, gleefully caught in the web of words. For the surpassing privilege of sharing my words about words in the pages of the Union Tribune and other newspapers, magazines, books, and in performance. And for the miraculous gift of life, what it has been, what it is, and what it will become. Hurrah. So let me mention again that if you like that or anything else, all you have to do is wing me a note with a request at Richard H. Lederer, Lederer @gmail.com, or go to verbivore.com, VERBIVORE. So I'm going to close with a toast to all of you, the thousands of people listening to this, watching it, and to the bazillion of my friends who, even if they're not from Brazil. So a close with a toast. Why do we call it a toast? I'm glad I asked me that, because it's one last chance to be your English teacher. It's a food metaphor, and it's kind of what you'd think. Back in the days of Queen Elizabeth and William Shakespeare, people would dip their spiced toast into their tankards of ale to improve the flavor and remove the impurities. And you're taking a time, I think this has come in at about 15 minutes, although I'm sure it seemed a lot longer. But to tune in on this, have some language and laughter. I hope you feel that, as with the dipping of the toast, it sweetens life, and to some extent, there's a diminution of the impurities. So I'm going to close with my favorite toast. Here is champagne to our real friends. Here's real pain to our champagne. To be real pains to real pain to our sham friends. Thank you for being real friends of the Coronado Library, Coronado, California, for those of you not in the state, and real friends of our glorious, uproarious, notorious, victorious, outrageous, courageous, contagious, stupendous, tremendous, end-over, endless adventure that we call the English language. Air hugs to all. Love you all.
Hi, that was great.
Hey, a little touching of the face and all, but really, you think it went okay, Eileen?
I enjoyed it very much. That it was fun.
I was listening for your laughter. Oh, that's right. But